Hi everyone, it's Michelle here. Today I'm going to be giving you a little look into the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero February kit. So here is a stamp set that comes in the kit. It's a big 6x8 stamp set and it has a bunch of solid stamps of birds and feathers and lots of little sentiments. And then you get 4 sheets of cardstock that have this really nice wood grain pattern. So there's 2 sheets of gray and 2 sheets of brown, and I really love these cardstock pieces. And then you get a whole bunch of dies. Look at all those dies you get that coordinate with the stamps, and also a couple that are just standalone dies. And then you get 3 little ink cubes. There's a lighter blue one, a brown one, and a light green. And then you get 2 little nest embellishments that you see here. They're just like little small dimensional fun pieces that you can have along with the birds. So this is all just a great value. It's $35, and as of right now I'm pretty sure it's still in stock, so you can buy that even if you're not a subscriber. So to start off, I'm going to be doing an ombre inking technique. So I just pulled out my Misty and I'm placing some of these bird images onto this piece of cardstock. I just pulled off whatever would fit. And I'm going to start off by pulling out some color combos of colors that I think would blend well together. So I'm going to start off with this blue color combo, and I'm inking up a couple of these birds. I'm inking up the entire image with this lightest blue color. So I'm going to use my Misty to stamp that down, and then I am going in with the second color, this kind of darker teal color, and inking up just parts of the stamp. So I want to add a little bit of dimension with this color and not ink up the entire thing. And then to kind of blur out the edges, I'm using a cloth to dab and soften at the edges of the ink so you don't get like a solid line, and it blends a lot better. And then I'm going in with this darkest blue color. And again, I'm not inking up the entire stamp. This time I'm doing even less color than the second color that I used, to really get almost like these shadow inked edges. And then I kind of wanted to blend over all of that again, so I went over with the lightest color. So then I went on to my next birds, and for this one or my next one bird I should say, and for this one I wanted to do like a bright pink color blending into a darker maroon color. So I inked up the top of that with the lighter pink, and then I'm going to go in with the darker maroon color. So same technique that I used before, and then go in with the lighter color again to blend it because I didn't do quite enough ink that first time. So this is really helpful to have this Misty tool to do this with, because it would be really hard to line up these stamps over and over again if you just had a stamp block. So for this technique, I would highly recommend getting one if you don't have one already, because you can do lots of cool techniques with this. And I'm also using a bunch of ink cubes that I've gotten in previous Hero Arts kits. So this is one reason I really love the kits, because I don't have a huge collection of inks, but I'm slowly starting to grow my collection, because you get a couple of small ink cubes each month, and it's just a great way to grow your collection. So for the next birds, I'm doing a green to teal to blue color combination, and I ended up really liking that combo, so I'll use it again in my next set of images, which you'll see later. And for my last one, I did a darker maroon to brown color, which I thought was a little bit more of a realistic color scheme. So those are the finished birds, and then I'm going to go in and pull off some feather stamps and do pretty much the same thing. And I'm going to pick out that favorite green to blue color combo that I did before. And this time you'll see I'm using more painterly strokes when I go in with the darker colors, really using the corners of that ink pad, and I'm not dabbing or softening the edges at all with the cloth for these, because I really want to get almost like strokes so that it looks like a feather. And you don't have to be good at painting or anything like that, but this technique is really easy to do with these ink cubes. So that's really awesome, and I love how they came out. So those are all my images that I die cut with the coordinating dies, and then I'm also going to stamp a couple of branches with onto these die cut pieces just to have them on hand. I'm not sure if I'm going to use them yet, but I just want to have them when I'm assembling my cards. So for my first card, I pulled out the gray wood grain cardstock and I cut it in half, and I pulled out a couple of those feathers, which were some of my favorite pieces. And behind that, I just bundled up a little bit of twine to give it a little bit of texture and something else to add interest to the card. And I'm going to be heat embossing the thanks sentiment that comes in the stamp set, and I'm heat embossing it on a little scrap of Nina Desert Storm cardstock in white with white embossing powder. And I picked the craft cardstock because I thought it would match well with the twine. And then I'm just going to be assembling all of this. So I put little squirts of liquid adhesive behind my twine, and you really don't need too much. It doesn't have to, like, every little bit of twine doesn't have to stay in place. I kind of like when things are a little more free form on my cards anyway. You don't need too much because what's really going to hold the twine in place is when you place these feathers on top, and they have foam adhesive on the back, and it's just going to keep it enough in place that it won't come loose, but not crazy enough so you don't have to like mess with getting glue everywhere. And then I'm just adhering this piece to a white card base. And then I'm going to add some Nouveau drops. I forget what this color is called, but I'll link it down below. And I'm just adding little drops, making sure to lift straight up when I come off so that you get perfect circles. And then I like to kind of just tap my card on my desk so that the Nouveau drops kind of settle and flatten a little bit so you don't get a point at the top. And that is my first card finished. So I'm going to set that aside to dry and move on to my next one. So I just put all my pieces in a little bowl on the side to keep them all together while I try to decide what my next design is going to be. I pulled out a bunch of scraps of alcohol inked backgrounds. I always keep the scraps because they're so pretty, and I figured that they'll make their way onto a card at some point. So I'm just playing around with different pieces of scraps and color combinations and just trying to figure out what I'm going to put together here, because at this point I didn't really know what I was going to do. But that's the fun of it. You just play around with all these pieces you created and all your scraps and put together a nice card. So for the one on the right, I pretty much figured out what I was going to do. I just did a really simple design, a strip of alcohol inked background. You could use any scrap of paper you have, like a pattern paper, or maybe a piece of paper that you've tried a technique on and you like cut off a little bit of the edge. Really anything works here. So I just adhered that along with a bird and one of the branches that I die cut and stamped. And I'm going to be adding a sentiment in a darker blue color because I thought that would match with the bird a little bit. It says sending you sunshine. And then for this one, again, I'm going to be adding Nouveau drops, but this one's in a different color. I believe this is like Neptune turquoise or something like that. Again, I'm going to link it down at the bottom. And I also added some to the branches because, I don't know, I thought it would look like berries or something. I don't know, but again, I'm tapping that onto my desk or with my hands just to flatten those Nouveau drops a little bit and get them a little more perfect. Then for my next card, I decided not to go with the alcohol ink scrap in the end. Instead, I wanted to kind of soften the background, so I die cut a vellum heart and put that behind the bird. And I'm trying to figure out what sentiment I want to put here and where I want it to go. And then eventually I just stamped that onto a scrap piece of white cardstock and added that to my card. And this one's pretty simple. I really wanted a lot of the background to show because, like I said, I really do love this cardstock. I think it's just really elegant and adds a lot to your card without being too bold or crazy. That was a pretty simple layout, and I'm just finishing it off with some sequins. These are sequins that came in the January My Monthly Hero kit, and I had some left over, and the colors went really well with the bird I stamped. So I decided to use some of those. And then again, I'm adhering this onto a white card base. So those are 3 cards so far that I've created. So I'm going to go ahead and make 1 or 2 more because I have so many pieces left that I stamped in the beginning. So for this one, I just pulled more of those feathers that I had, and this time I'm using the brown wood grain cardstock. And I just stamped a happy birthday sentiment that again came in the set. And this one's really simple. I just scattered a couple of feathers so they look like they're falling, and then I have that hummingbird as well. And for this feather on the top, I cut it in pieces so that it almost looks like it's 2 feathers. So as you can see, there's 1 piece on the top, and then I can use that little scrap and it'll look like a whole nother piece on the side on the right. And for this one, I'm going to be adding the white Nuvo drops again. And I was having really bad luck with my Nuvo drops this day, so they just were getting all over the place and it was kind of a mess. But they're usually not this hard to use, I promise. So that pretty much finished off that card, and after that was all dry, I added it to a white card base. I didn't want to mess it up while it was still wet, so for that one I waited to do that off camera. So here's a photo of all the cards that I pulled together with the kit. There's actually 1 extra card in there that I didn't film that I ended up going back in and creating. I'm just using some of the leftover pieces I had, and I used one of the standalone dies. You can see it's the nest with the nice texture on there. And I also actually used some of the ribbon that comes in the packaging. The kit that you get is always really beautifully packaged and wrapped with a nice ribbon, and I thought this robin's egg blue ribbon would work perfectly with the birds and the eggs. And here are some closer looks at the other cards that I showed you in this video. It was really easy to make a whole bunch at once with all of the images that I stamped with that ombre inking technique in the beginning. Thanks so much for stopping by and watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and let me know if you try this ombre inking technique.